Thank God it's Friday night, and I just got paid.
Oh, hey guys, just listen to my my weekly Friday song, and doing some math. I hope you liked my intro. Here we are, rate of change. Quick notes today. I just wanted to introduce this to you guys and have you guys work on your own. So we are talking about rate of change, and we're going to start with the definition. What is rate of change? So it's a ratio that compares how one variable changes compared to another, and specifically in a linear function. So a couple things to note about rate of change is that first, linear functions, just in general, are going to increase or decrease at a constant rate. We already talked about this the other day. We also called this the common difference, okay? So that's the constant rate I'm talking about. It's the common difference. And there's another name for it, and the other name for it is rate of change. So we're no longer going to call it the common difference. Instead, we're going to call it the rate of change. And the rate of change is also known as the slope, which I think a lot of you guys have heard before. That's why linear functions graph a nice straight line, because for every x value that's increasing, the y value is increasing by the same amount every time, creating a linear relationship. So another way to think about rate of change, the best way to think about it actually, is to think of it as the change in y divided by the change in x. Okay, so another way to even think about that is if we take the common difference of all the y values and we divide it by the common difference of the x values, then specifically that's going to give us the number that represents the rate of change. All right, so again, we also call this the slope. So we're going to kind of talk about all of that in this section. So just to summarize what I just said, there's 3 different ways to think about it, and there's actually 3 different ways to find it. We can think of this as the change in the dependent divided by the change of the independent. I think that we like to think of it this way the best: the change in the y divided by the change in the x, or the common difference of the y divided by the common difference of the x. It all means the same thing. So let's dive into some examples. First, if I give you guys a table of values, can you find the rate of change? Well, I know what you can do. You are able to find the common differences because we did that the other day. So let's talk about that and let's find the common differences. So for x values here, we're going up by 1, up by 1, up by 1. So the change in x here is 1. Change in y, this is going up by 10. No, it's not. It's going up by 5. I said 5, but I was looking at the number 10. So it's going up by 5s. And so the change in y is 5. Now if we just apply that to our rate of change formula, which is the change in y divided by the change in x, I get my rate of change. Change in y is 5 divided by change in x, which is 1. Final answer, 5 divided by 1 is 5. So the rate of change, or the slope, is 5. All right, now the biggest mistake kids make is they accidentally put the x on top instead of the y. So make sure you always put the y on top. Let's try that again with number 2. Change in x, we're going up by 2. Oops. All right, sorry about that. We're going up by 2s. And change in y is going down by 1. Okay, so let's summarize. Change in x is positive 2. Change in y, negative 1. Apply to the formula, which is change in y divided by change in x, negative 1 divided by 2. And that's actually my answer because negative 1 over 2 doesn't reduce. So I'm done. Negative 1/2 is the rate of change for number 2. Let's repeat number 3. Now this one looks a little bit different. It's going to be. Change in x is going up by 2. However, the change in y, nothing's happening. Well, okay. So my change in x was 2, and my change in y was 0. Just apply to the formula. Change in y divided by change in x. Change in y is 0 divided by 2. Guys, that works. What is 0 divided by 2? It's 0. So when the 0 is on top or in the numerator, then the answer is 0. My rate of change is allowed to be 0. We'll talk about what that looks like as a line coming up. Let's do one more. This time my change in x is not changing. This time we're going up by 0. So my change in x is 0. This is going, up by 4. I think there's a mistake on this one. This doesn't work. Let's do 0 instead of 2. Otherwise, this is not linear. That was my bad. Little mistake there, but that's okay. We'll start over. Let's say this is always going up by 4, so my change in y is 4. Apply to the formula, change in y over change in x. What do we get? We get 4 over 0. Now, there is a problem with this one because we're not allowed to have a 0 in the denominator, guys. So this one is actually undefined. So what I always think is if the 0 is underneath the fraction, then it's undefined. So undefined. All right, this is finding rate of change numerically. We're moving on. Okay, last thing, well, second to last thing, is if I'm given 2 points. This we call the slope formula. You may have heard of it before. But it's also the rock formula or rate of change formula. Another way to say slope is rate of change, or ROC for rock. All right, guys, so this sounds worse than it is, but it's y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Now, the way I think of it is this. I barely remember those little subscripts, the 2's and the 1's, but I just label x, y, x, y. Okay, because all points are x, comma, y. Now, the first point gets 1's and the second point gets 2's, and then you can just plug into the formula that way. The way I remember to do it is I always pick one of the points. It doesn't matter which. I'll pick the first point in the next example, but I'm picking this point, and I'm going to start with this point for both the top and the bottom. So I'm going to write the formula out. So the change in y is y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1, which is your change in x. So you can always think of it as change in y over change in x. Regardless, you guys, I'm going to take my first point, I'm going to write the y value. And then I'm going to subtract the other y value of the other point, divided by. Now I'm going to pick my x values. So I have to start with the same point I started with on top. So I have to start with this 1 minus 4. Okay, doing the math. 2 minus 2 is 0. Over 1 minus 4, which is negative 3. This time the 0 is on top, which is allowed, so my rate of change is 0. I'm going to skip to number 7. Same thing here. So I even get so lazy that I just do y minus y divided by x minus x, and then I always remember to start with the same point. This time I'm going to start with the first point. So I look at the y value. That's 3 minus the other y value, 7, divided by. Start again with the first point. So negative 1 is this x value minus 2. 3 minus 7 is negative 4, divided by -3. Okay, well that doesn't really work, right? Doesn't come out nice, but I can reduce the negatives. My rate of change for this one is 4/3. Okay, last example that I'm going to do in this section is number 8. Again, it gets super repetitive. Y minus y divided by x minus x. Y values first. -4 minus 10 divided by x values. 3 minus 3. -4 minus 10 is -14 divided by 0. Uh-oh, under undefined still applies. The 0 is underneath, so this answer is undefined. Okay, guys, let's move on to the last section. And this is just nice and easy. I'm just asking, is the slope positive, negative, 0, or undefined? Okay, so when I have a graph, you have to go from left to right. Otherwise, you will get the wrong answer because the graph is going up and it's going down on the left. But if I read it from left to right, like this, from the left, as I go towards the right, do you guys agree this is going up? Think about climbing a hill, or I always actually think of a person walking. If the person starts at the left, they'd be going up. So since they're going up, the slope is positive. I also think of a treadmill. The incline is positive, I'm going up. If the incline's negative, I'm going down. So here, from the left, this person's going down, so this is a negative slope, which means it's a negative rate of change. Now also think of the treadmill here. Guys, if there is no incline at all, if the incline is 0, it's a horizontal line. Horizontal lines have a slope of 0. And undefined is the vertical. Why? Because if I tried to walk on a treadmill that was vertical, I would fall right off. Yikes. This is undefined. So vertical lines are undefined. And that should give you guys enough information to get your homework done for this weekend. So you guys can take this and start your homework. Have a good one. Happy Friday.